Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. Once again, I am your host, Greg Flammang, and with me is Jamie Uyeyama, the Yama, Jamie University. We are going to be doing a special mailbag episode, our first ever mailbag for the Hit and Hustle crew. It should be a good time. And we enlisted a bunch of questions on the Irish Sports Daily premium message board. So we got some good questions there, and we're going to go over those. First of all, Jamie, how you doing? How are you gearing up for the spring game coming up in a couple weeks here?
I'm ready to go. I'm ready for to see something for the first time in a
See
while.
things. That would be great, wouldn't it?
That would be good. That would be good. And I mean, I don't expect to see a lot. I don't think they're going to show a lot, but yeah, I want to see some young guys like we talked about on Power Hour this week. I want to see some young guys run around. When you see some of those guys make plays. And I'm kind of just ready for things to kind of get going and kind of keep it rolling with spring. And I looking forward to all the visits that are going to happen during that time too. And I'm sure we'll dive into that when it's closer to around that time too.
Yeah, the visits are coming up. Let's see. When is the spring game? The 23rd. We have a question from. Are you going to be around for the game?
I am not going to be around for the game. I had talked to Mike about it, and he was like, "Don't go to the game."
I mean, it's probably better that you went to the practice.
Don't definitely like from what because we had talked about whether or not to go to that weekend where there was practice and pro day, and whether or not there was better to go that spring weekend or spring game weekend. And you just don't know how much they're actually going to show, what you're going to kind of get out of it. And I guess I could have went as well, but I am going to be down there again for Invasion. And if they have any other kind of stuff going on there with I don't know if hopefully I think they're going to give media access to Invasion, and then hopefully the big man camp as well and all that. And looking forward to that. Right. That'll be spicy for you, Cordell. Like, that's right. Not spring game, not as spicy. Invasion, plenty spicy.
All right. And Brennan here asking wants us to confirm 9 straight sidearm no look touchdowns during the 104 play scrimmage. You know what? Cannot confirm or deny that.
I was just going to say the same thing. You know what? I can't say for
or
sure.
Deny. I can't say it didn't happen. Maybe it did. Right? Who knows? Right?
Heard some rumblings. Maybe it was behind the back. Maybe it was behind the back.
People are talking. People are saying. Many people are saying many things. None can be confirmed. So we'll see. And Brian F. Any update on Dante Moore? We've got a bunch of questions about Dante Moore coming up, so we'll hit that up in a second. And let's just get started right now on the questions. This is from ND Matt. So this is from the Notre Dame message board. ND Matt 01. After watching the practice video yesterday, it looked like Buckner had made some changes to his throwing motion. He seems to be coming much more over the top than I remember from last year. How do you guys feel about his mechanics? How do they look this spring?
You know what? I didn't notice a huge difference in his mechanics when I watched him in person. I didn't think it was a big difference. I didn't think there was really that big of a deal with his mechanics last year anyways. I really kind of think I'm way more of, and my dad is, for anyone who doesn't know, my dad was a longtime high school coach. He's a quarterback guy. So coach quarterbacks, coach plenty of guys at college level, coach a little bit at the college level too, the quarterback position. So he's kind of like my go-to guy that I talk to about like mechanics, about quarterbacks. And he's always just been a big footwork guy. And like, obviously you want somewhat, you don't want to have the wonkiest throwing motion, and you don't want to have a long wind up or anything like that. You want to have a quick release, but as you kind of see, there's a lot of different ways to kind of skin a cat. And especially with the way guys kind of have to, I think the new thing in quarterback play is like actually practicing changing arm angles and doing different things.
Off-platform stuff.
Yes, off-platform stuff, right? So I would just say that, yeah, like I'm not too concerned about that. And as long as his footwork is tight, then that's what I kind of care about more.
Yeah, and I think, you know, from the videos that we've seen, I think what you're seeing there is drill work. And when you're watching drill work, like you're focused on all the stuff like the footwork and throwing in rhythm and throwing confidently and that sort of thing. It's different when you get in a game, right? So let's see how the mechanics look for as far as like his arm angles and all those other things, his footwork, especially when you get into a game, like, you know, probably not even the spring game, right? Like it's going to show itself against Ohio State. And that's when we're going to know, like,
it's when the pressure's in his face, what's he going to do and those kinds of, and really too. And some of that stuff too, like we said, with the off-platform stuff, it's not even about like maybe he's improvised. Maybe he'll just make some insane throws that are going to be off-platform. It's like, you know, when he has a clean pocket and when he's able to kind of step up and do the things, is he making the right reads? Is he, you know, making the right decisions, delivering the ball in a spot where, like, you know, ball placement is huge. It's massive, right? And that's what's really, you know, he's going to be evaluated on when it comes down to it.
All right. Move on to the next question from Iris Bronx. Any buzz about Ryan Barnes out of camp? Love his potential.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, Mickens didn't really say a lot about him the other day when he was asked about him. Had a lot more praise for Jaden Mickey. That kind of stood out to me a little bit more, that Mickey was getting a lot of buzz. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, I mean, there's buzz about how he looks. I mean, the guy looks like, like he's chiseled. He looks chiseled, right? Yeah. So, but as kind of we've mentioned on the previous shows too, it's tough to get an evaluation on some of these guys and where he's at corners, too. So, so I don't really know. There's not like I wouldn't say there's like a ton of, there's not like bad buzz or good buzz or whatever. It's kind of like, you know, with a lot of the young guys, it's kind of wait and see.
Everything that I've heard about Ryan Barnes is all related to physical stature, right? Just like how good he looks out there and how he, you know, playing the boundary and how that is a fit, right? So again, that's something that you need to see from the spring game, especially. Like I want to see a situation where he's put in the situation where he needs to turn and run with someone like Braden Lindsay or someone like Lorenzo Styles, because those guys we know can really get vertical quickly. And that's my question about Ryan Barnes is like, can he turn and run with those guys on a deeper pass? Because, you know, we know physically anything underneath, he's going to be good enough, right? No, I don't want to say good enough, but he's good. That's going to be where his strengths are because of his size, right? He's long. And when you're long, you don't have to be as quick on something like a curl route or an out route or an in route, because you're long enough to get to a play. You don't have to be as close as someone like, let's say, Tariq Bracy, who's smaller, right? Tariq Bracy has to be right there because he's not as long. So that's what we want to see from Ryan Barnes. Hopefully there's a chance we get to see that in the spring. All right, next question is from Matt Freeman. What's the over?
Who's this? Who?
Or it's a troll on the board.
Yeah. Well, that's not a lie.
What's the over under for how many total touchdowns the Bengals beat the Steelers by this fall? I'm thinking 6.5.
This guy wins a playoff game for the first time in 3 decades. They hadn't won a playoff game since the 80s. And he's getting really tall right now, standing really tall. You know what? I mean, I honestly, this isn't going to be, depending on what happens at the Steelers at quarterback, I'd still think they're kind of like in a transition mode where the Steelers are going to be one of those teams where they're probably like, you know, a game over 500 again. I think the Bengals, you could see them winning the AFC North. So I mean, if they played one of the games and they put it on the Steelers by a couple 2 or 3 touchdowns in a game, I wouldn't be surprised. But then again, they are the Bengals, so I wouldn't count them having bad luck happen to them and major injuries, and then all of a sudden they drop way back down.
I mean, how many times have we seen it, right? Like a team makes an improbable Super Bowl run, and then the next year they're not this good, right? So they've lost their linebacker coach, which is a big problem for them. So we'll have to see.
Well, and then there's that graphic that and someone posted it in our thread too, but this was something that obviously I've seen this shared to Matt before too in other text threads, where a quarterback who goes to the Super Bowl the first time and loses, the last 16 guys that do it never made it back. So good luck with that. That's good. I mean, if anyone's gonna not kind of break that trend, it'd be Joe Burrow. I am a big believer in Joe Burrow, but I don't think
a lot of things went right. A lot of upsets.
Yeah, that is true.
So
if they probably if the Bills cannot give up a field goal in 13 seconds, then I think they probably beat the Bengals. But they did.
All right, moving on here. All right. Besides quarterback play, can you each talk about 3 things you were looking for in the spring game to give us insight into what Notre Dame might have this fall? That's from Fifth Quarter Irish.
Versus Fifth, great poster on IC. Always appreciate his contributions. I would say the things that I'm looking for, I like I said, I'm not going to show much. I expect them to be extremely vanilla on defense. I would say some speed at linebacker. That's one thing I'm looking for. Being faster at linebacker. And that goes from like all the way up and down the depth chart. So that's something I'm looking for in the spring game. Kind of some explosive plays from the backfield. That's another thing I'm looking for. And then I would say probably just Lorenzo Styles, at least flashing at least once or twice in the game to put everyone on notice that he's going to be a dude this year. What about you, Greg?
So, I mean, first of all, I'm interested in what the format is going to be, which I'm a little bit worried about because Matt said on Power Hour that Notre Dame viewed the scrimmage that nobody got to see as their spring game, which, okay, that just kind of tells me like if that's true, then the players know that's true. And therefore the spring game that we see, they're not going to treat it the same way. Like,
no,
you can't have that kind of intensity, right? If you already did the thing, if this is a, like, let's just get through it kind of thing, then
there could be like some random, you know what is actually really sad? Because Greg, this is what would have happened if Kyle Hamilton was on the team. He would have lined up a receiver in the spring game. Because I think we're going to see like Isaiah Foskey at tight end, maybe it's like that kind of thing. Maybe you see like something like that, just for fun. They're going to do that kind of thing, right? Some kind of play action, short yardage thing to Blake Fisher or something like that. That's the kind of stuff they're going to try to do. That, sell it up for the fans. And, Corey Robinson's going to fake excitement for it.
If Kyle Hamilton was in this, they put him in at quarterback. He'd be the QB1 and he would be, it would be good. He would kill it. I've seen it. I've seen the clips of Kyle Hamilton playing quarterback and he's good. So, but like, what would I like to see? Okay. I want to see Deion Colsey do some stuff. I want to see Jaden Thomas do some stuff. Brennan, he can see my soul leaving my body, and that's true. I don't disagree with that. So I want to see Colsey do stuff. I want to see Jaden Thomas. I want to see Jadarian Price. Like, let's see it for real, right? A lot of talk about him. Let's see that for real. I want to see. Let's see who else defensively. I want to see. I mean, look, Tariq Bracy. A lot of Tariq Bracy stuff, right? Let's hear it, or let's see it. I want to see some Tariq Bracy. I want to see what does Botelho look like. Like the up and comers, right? Like the defensive line, Nana, Aaronsberger. Let's see it, right? I that's what I want to see. Like the guys, there are guys that we kind of know, right? That are going to be contributors and that sort of thing. Always looking for the safeties. Always looking for something from Xavier Watts. That I'm excited about him. So that's pretty much what my focus is on, kind of what I'll be looking for in the spring game. So, and everyone asking questions in the comments, I'm starring everything. So we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will get to those questions.
Yeah, I'm going to get to those questions. I'm starring all your questions. We'll get to those. So keep asking them. They're great questions so far. I'm just going through the message board first, and then we'll get to those things. All right. So we'll move on to the next one. And this one is from Irish Bronx. Can you shed some light on why the consensus seemed to be that DeAndre Moore would make a decision late March, early April, and what happened that changed that?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not in his head. I'm not in, I can't say, what his family decided either. I would just think the main thing that changed that is that he kind of understands that he's only going to get to do this once. He's only going to get to go and kind of get the full red carpet treatment once, and he wants to kind of, play it out and do it right. And frankly, I don't blame him. The other thing is, it's not like he's doing this and going to be like, he's going to decide at one of the all-star games or whatever, right? Like, I would say, like, he's going to do it in the summer, which is when most of these guys end up decide for all positions, really, right? And I understand why you want to get a quarterback in sooner to help you recruit, but I mean, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that they're going to get Braylon James, very soon. And so he's, pretty big time prospect at receiver, and doesn't matter that they don't have DeAndre Moore in the boat yet. So, right. And I think it will help when it's like, officially official and he commits and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's anything to worry about too much. That's my opinion.
I would say I don't think it's anything to worry about too much right now. Right.
Yeah, things can always change for sure.
And as far as the timeline or like the consensus was that because the signal and the talk just generally was that this was going to be wrapped up in April. No one thought that he was going to take officials. And then when he came off the trip and he's talking about taking official visits, well, that pushes everything till the summer now, right? It's not like he can do that, right away. Like he had taken a bunch of visits. He went to Notre Dame during spring break, right? So it's hard to take officials during the school year. So once the summer comes, you take your official visits then. That's what pushes everything back, because you can't just take officials, in May, right? You can't do that. So that's what's pushing everything back. And as far as, why he decided to do that, just changed his mind. I mean, I think, he just decided, and like, what are you going to do? Right. Like, players can do that. And it's not like he's wrong to do that. That's not the wrong thing. There's nothing.
Sorry to interrupt, but one thing I wanted to mention, because I think this is something that probably not a lot of people have thought about, but you could easily see where, say, he has it set that this is like, these are the 5 places I want to go.
Yeah.
Well, some of those places are going to take a quarterback before then. Yeah. Because they're not going to wait for DeAndre Moore if they don't think they have a chance at DeAndre Moore, or they don't think that they have a realistic chance of doing it. So if they haven't got anybody yet, yeah, then so be it, or whatever. But like, I don't think, like, if Miami, say, gets whoever, I have no idea of Miami's quarterback board, but if they get, whoever, another big time guy, they're not going to be like, still trying to go after more. Like, that's just not how it works. Right. And And if anything too, that would probably that's not something that like would help them land more anyways, even if they were like, hey, still come. So I think as it kind of plays out, I think just people just kind of got to let it play out and let it fall where it may.
Yeah, like I don't know. What was it, a month ago or a month? Like maybe, end of January. Whenever it was, Jackson Arnold committed to Oklahoma, and it didn't, and like people didn't think Notre Dame was in on Dante Moore. You'd be begging for him to have Notre Dame be the favorite, and going into the officials, right? So we just have to adjust our mental like expectations for when this was all going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just that's what you got to do on that. All right, this next one is from ND Tom 88, and there's actually a larger. I'm going to read that. This is all I could fit onto the StreamYard, but I think X Watts could be a huge weapon in packages given his downhill tackling ability in the open field, but he appears from reports to not be as far along as coverage. What are some roles he could play this year and some teams he could feature more prominently against this year?
Well, Navy, like, I mean, you're going to play that. So that's certainly a game if, you're not feeling good about some of the other safeties or, some of the other defensive backs in a certain situation, like that's a game where, you want a guy who has those kind of instincts to kind of like slip blocks and make tackles on the perimeter. He's a perfect guy for that. So that's definitely like a game for that. It's also one of the reasons why, we had suggested that maybe Rover might be better for him. But I mean, it's hard for us to say like, oh, he's like struggling in coverage or whatever. We just haven't seen enough of it. And the problem is that they have enough depth there that the reps aren't like, there's not a ton of reps, right? And they added a guy in Brandon Joseph who's like obviously is shining in coverage and turning heads and stuff too. So I think what you're going to see happen with X Watts this year is it all depends on what happens with our guys like DJ Brown and Houston Griffith. Are they going to stay? If they don't leave after, they don't go in the portal, they decide, hey, I'm going to stay, if on the team this year, well, then that changes a little bit of the depth chart and where maybe X Watts might fit in it if he stays a safety, right? And if that's the case, then if one of those guys leaves or both of them leave or whoever, right? Then that changes where you're going to see X Watts, and he's probably going to play a lot more and get a lot more opportunities, right? And you got to remember, this is like the first spring ball that he's working at safety the entire time, and this is going to be like the first full off season of that, right? So, I mean, he's a guy that could easily be like, all of a sudden he's turning heads in the spring game because he's just kind of getting let loose, right? And a lot of people could be talking about it. And obviously that doesn't mean he's going to be an impact player in the fall, but it could be like, another thing to kind of spark it whenever, he gets enough opportunities, he keeps showing up. And I think, it could happen with X Watts.
Yeah. And as far as some roles, like I just think there's a hybrid Rover role for him that fits really well, where he is crashing the line of scrimmage on any kind of run, any kind of screen or something like that, because he has such a nose for the ball. And I think he's just a good enough athlete to where if you work with him enough on the coverage things, where look, he doesn't have to be in man, right? Like you can put him in a zone, right? Like he understands how to play zone. Okay, he played safety in high school. He knows how to play coverages. So he knows how to do those things. I mean, I've said it so many times. I think he's going to blow up this year in terms of like I don't want to say blow up. He's going to be a breakout player in terms of he's in the lineup a lot. Anytime you have someone who knows how to be around the ball and how to make plays on the ball, that's a good thing to have, and they will find a way to put you on the field. So I think like it's a hybrid role. Anytime they're going to play three safeties, I think he's going to be in the game. And so that's kind of how I see his role playing out. And we'll see. Maybe we'll see some coverage stuff during the spring game or whatever they're doing. But I'm excited about him as a player. All right, this next question is from, let's see, R Henry 84, and I don't know the answer to this. Maybe Jamie does.
No, I have no idea on this. This is like way beyond. This is, you got to talk to. I would contact Notre Dame's ticket people, and I don't even know, frankly, how involved they are in that too. If that is something like you could buy Shamrock series tickets from that. So, I mean, Google's your friend, because that is not a thing that I don't think that I'm not even sure that Notre Dame's ticket people directly are the ones selling there. So yeah, I would, that's what I would do if I was him.
Okay. I just want to get to this question. Are all dal considered lentils, or are all lentils considered dal? What's the skinny on Moore? This is from Alaskan on the board, by the way.
You know what? I have no idea. And for number one, it's a good question. I would guess Google's your friend too on that one.
You know what? And if anyone is in the chat who knows the answer,
who knows it, let us know.
That would be great.
Let us know. I would like to know. And the skinny more, I think we just kind of talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about that.
The only other thing I'll add for it, and something that I mentioned on Power Hour this week too, with talking with Mike and Matt about it, was who's the other team for Dante Moore? You haven't heard it.
That's the thing. It's such a
you haven't heard it, right? And that's the one thing. So where people will say, like, because people scared about like a Will Shipley situation, right? Where it's like all of, like, your eggs are in one basket with Will Shipley. Well, Clemson was always there with Shipley. So it was kind of an either or, and maybe Notre Dame was probably always like a 1B at best in that situation. And you're kind of hoping that maybe they could swing it, but they didn't end up swinging it, right? And as Matt mentioned in the thing, the pandemic probably had a lot to do with that. That hurt them with the Shipley thing. Who's the 1B for Moore?
Yeah.
No, like literally, like I don't think he's going to Ohio State, and Ohio State doesn't think he's going to Ohio State. Michigan, I don't even like. I don't think they think that they're really have a great shot at it. I'm sure they're still trying, So I just think the way it is, there's no other team that's there unless another team comes up and you say, like, oh, there's like actual like buzz that, this team, he's really like, that might be the other team. Wouldn't get too caught up on it until that happens, if that happens.
Yeah, and as far as like the Shipley thing, look, this is a top 10 overall player at quarterback. Like you cannot juggle multiple. Like Chris Vizina is a top 100 player. Jackson Arnold, top 100 player. You cannot juggle multiple quarterbacks like this. Like that's not.
Well, it's why Alabama is, they're Arch Manning, right? And there's a bunch of schools that are Arch Manning.
Every school is going after their guy.
And then if they didn't think, and the teams that were on Arch Manning who didn't think they were going to get Arch Manning, they pivoted. And it's why Ohio State offered Vizina, because they were like, I don't think we're getting more. So they offered Vizina, right? And Clemson was trying to get Arch. And then when Arch wasn't going to go, that's the thing, right? And, man, Sid Irish is just jumping in here, and he's Mr. Negative in here. And this is why I just want to bring this up, because they didn't offer all that money to Nico, who, whatever. And if they have all this money, so people just getting ahead of themselves. They're looking at all the bad situations, all the way this can go wrong. And you know what? I don't know what's going to happen, right? It could go, things can go the other way, but like Notre Dame fans got to really chill on the, like, everything. Well, this is going to happen, because it doesn't always happen like that. You don't always have to look for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Oregon, they did lose out to Nico because of the Tennessee thing. So we'll see. All right. This is actually, I really like this question. I realize this is hypothetical and irrelevant, but I'm curious. Who would you feel best about starting at quarterback against Ohio State this fall? 2020 Ian Book, 2021 Jack Cohn, or current Tyler Buckner? This question is from Irish Mike 1014.
You know what? I thought about this question a lot. This is a great question.
Yeah.
Great hypothetical question here. And I was going to say, oh, it's got to be 2020 Ian Book.
Okay.
But Ian Book, traditionally bad to start the season. Kind of rough.
All right.
Rough starts this season.
Right.
So I don't know. I think if you're thinking, like, is it going to be like the Ian Book who showed up for the Clemson game at home? Then you're thinking, oh, of course, Ian Book, right? The veteran guy. But I just think that because of that had me a little bit wary, and I don't know if that would be the pick. And obviously there's just a lot to not, there's just so much unknown with Tyler Buckner. I mean, I'm still going to pick Ian Book, but I thought it was going to be a slam dunk, and it wasn't a slam dunk for me.
Yeah. So, and the other part too is, like, if Notre Dame, well, I feel like the best version of Notre Dame is the skill set of what Tyler Buckner hypothetically has, right? Because of the RPO stuff. Because Ian Book was not a good RPO player, A, because of what he showed in games, and B, because they didn't emphasize it. And I can only imagine that they didn't emphasize it because he wasn't very good in practice.
Yeah.
So I just think, okay, but it's hard to pick someone who I've never seen and like really start a game, right? So, I don't love.
You're going to pick a 3-year starter, a guy who won the most games in Notre Dame history.
He won the biggest game for Notre Dame.
You would just have to.
However many years.
I mean, and I wouldn't pick Cohn just because his lack of mobility. I just think against the defensive line and how they're going to play it, like I just think that would be like Book. I think would be able to, get some conversions on third down with his legs and things like that. And I mean, you pick Book because of the experience, but would I be surprised if Buckner's like a much better player than Book? No, I wouldn't, but I can't say that right now. So I would pick Book. That's a great question, though. Great question.
Another thing too is Ian Book's never played behind a Harry Houston offensive line either. And they've never had a running game that was like that, I guess. Like the 2020 team wasn't that, it was more of just like kind of handed off to Kyron. It wasn't, I mean, but I don't know, like, could he, and he's never operated like away from Brian Kelly either. So it's kind of like, maybe there's a whole dimension to Ian Book's game that we just don't know about. But we know the things that he did do were really good. So I'd have to take him. Like if it was me, like I would feel best about Ian Book. Even if Tyler Buckner's skill set might be my favorite one.
Yeah.
His hypothetical skill set, if that makes sense. All right. Good question. I enjoyed that. All right. This is from, let's see, Funk Beavis. Can Notre Dame consistently run the ball if Alt, Fisher, and Patterson are great, but the two guards are below average? How good do you think the guards will be?
Well, I don't think they're going to be below average. It's been a long time since Notre Dame had a below average guard. Like even Kane Madden, and people will say he had extreme limitations. I get it. He was at least average. Like I think people, because Notre Dame is a little bit spoiled with offensive line play, and I have to watch a lot of other Notre Dame opponents, like not just when they're playing Notre Dame in preparation for these games. And like, there's a lot of bad offensive line play, especially in the ACC. And so like Josh Lugg, who is kind of like a guy that Notre Dame fans are, frustrated with at times because, he gets beat definitely more so than kind of like the standard that Notre Dame Notre Dame fans have been used to in recent years for a starting offensive lineman. He'd probably start not probably. He'd start on every offensive line in the ACC at somewhere. He would start somewhere. So that's the way you kind of got to look at it, is that there aren't going to be too many teams that Notre Dame can't run against this year. And I think the guard play, so just say it's Slug and Kristofic, say that's how it is. Even like Kristofic last year was like above average, I would say.
Yeah.
At
least average.
Yeah. So he's going to be worse this year under Harry Hiestand and another year of starting? I don't think so. And whether it's Lug or Rocco Spindler or whoever there, I just think that like Notre Dame has had, specifically at right guard, they've had guys that have like, it's been a drop off when they've had like, Mike Golick Jr. was not as good as like Chris Watt on that 2012 team or whatever, let's say. And, but he was still like at least average, so yeah. I don't think you're going to see the guard play be below average. I think will probably be above average. And I think they'll be able to run the ball pretty well this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're and not just that, but it's not like you're without options either, because, Harry Hiestand was lavishing Rocco Spindler with praise, right? And that's a top 100 offensive lineman, And so with the way Kristofic played, at the very, like, the least generous thing you could say, he was just average, right? He's just an average player. I don't expect that he'll be that this year just because people get better, right? And so between Kristofic, Lug, and Spindler, I think you're going to find, average to above average play there. Plus, you have Jarrett Patterson. If Jarrett Patterson is great, then Notre Dame's going to run the ball fine, because he can always help out the weaker of the two guards, and they can do that way and complement, whatever weakness there is on the line. So,
and Tommy Rees showed last year too that they will adjust to the strengths of the line and what those guys can and can't do. So yeah, I think they're gonna be run the ball either way, and definitely not below average guard play.
Yeah. All right. This question is from Clashmore. Do you think there's any chance Notre Dame will end up entering next season with a 2-quarterback system of some sort?
Maybe a small chance. Because if you would have asked me last year, I would have said no chance. Then all of a sudden they go into the Toledo game and they were basically a 2-quarterback team pretty much the rest of the year. Right. Yeah. So,
it just says entering the season.
Yeah. I think there's a chance. Probably not a great chance. I think they'll roll with one guy. That would be my guess.
Yeah, it's non-zero. There's a non-zero chance, but I just don't think they want to do that, and I don't think they need to, because the presumed starter is. I mean, in this case, then it would have to be Drew Pine wins the job. They still want Buckner.
Yes, that would be the scenario.
I mean,
and I think that is obviously the least likely scenario.
Yeah, so yeah. That's why, it's just like I don't know. It's possible, but I don't see it right now. And let's say even something happened to Buckner, like you would just roll with Pine, because he's mobile enough, right? Like you can still use him. He's more mobile than, like, obviously Jack Cohn, so he can move around a little bit. I think you can still do the RPO things. It's just that you won't be running like quarterback counter and that sort of thing. But you can still do some of that RPO stuff. This question comes from GVSND. Some posters seem concerned about the complexity of Golden's scheme. Could Golden have the expertise to make the defense complex for opponents without overwhelming the players?
Yeah, definitely. He could have the expertise to do that. And I don't think people, the people who are concerned about that are having like BBG flashbacks thinking about that. But that is like the exact opposite of the philosophy of Marcus Freeman on defense. And one of the reasons why he was like, I'm not just handing this over to somebody to just implement whatever the heck they want. Like, no, this is like going to be, he knows this is the third defensive coordinator that these guys have had in 3 years, he's not trying to overwhelm them with things because he knows like his whole philosophy is like, play fast, right? Play fast and, simplify if you need to, right? And so I don't see any way that it's going to be too complex for that. Obviously, there's always a learning curve whenever there's new new philosophies, new systems, whatever coming in, new schemes, etc. But like I just don't see that being a problem. Not in a way where you're going to see like, wow, like there's just a ton of busts because that, of that. And it's been a long time since you've seen that from Notre Dame, period. And I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And it's just, he's been adding on to what things that they already know. And so once you're adding wrinkles, then you're good. And we're going to get another question here. A similar question in a couple about, what is actually complex and what isn't. So we'll get to that, but this isn't something that I'm worried about. I think it's going to be a kind of a smooth transition for the defense with Al Golden. Okay, this is from RUEND. How does Jaden Lamar compare and contrast with Cedric Irvin Jr. and also with JD Price and even with Jabarian Payne for that matter?
This is a great question. Rue, great, and ISD poster as well. I would say Lamar is more slippery, kind of a little bit of maybe surprising speed. I know he ran like a recent 40 that was in the low 4.5. That it kind of surprised me.
That surprised me too.
Yeah, because I don't think he maybe runs that fast on the field, but maybe he's getting faster, and that's a thing. So that's something to kind of think about there with him. But he's got a little bit of Kyron to his game. And I would say Cedric Irvin, the comp that I had for him was Devin Singletary, who's on the Buffalo Bills, was Florida Atlantic, who is a make you miss guy. Just awesome lateral quickness, not big. He's not going to run you over. That's not his game, right? Where Lamar has maybe a little bit where, yeah, maybe he will drop his pads and truck a DB every now and then. And Irvin, that's not his game. His game is different. And I just see him as more of like a make you miss type, a little bit more dynamic. Maybe not a home run hitter. Where that's where JD Price, I would say, he's more of the home run hitter, speed, the guy who's like give him a crease and go, and he still has that kind of like that dynamic lateral agility as well. So he's the guy that I would view as the best prospect out of them all. And Payne, he's much more like hit the hole with authority type. A guy that I kind of view as an inside runner who, if you're like blocking it up right, he's going to be able to hit it and possibly break it because he's got some of that. Injuries aside, if we're talking about like the best version of him, right? So I think they're all kind of a little bit different, and I think that's good. Like I'm always a fan of having guys that aren't always the kind of the same style, where that's harder to me. That makes it harder for defenses to prepare for.
Yeah, and just like the four that are just on the screen right here, I think they are pretty different, all of them. I think JD Price is the most pure running back there, followed by Lamar. I think Cedric Irvin is more in the Theo type. Like I don't see the like explosiveness from Cedric Irvin, or like any kind like the long speed there. And Jabarian Payne, I think, has that. I think Jabarian Payne has I really like him. The more I watch him, the more I'm like, I really, really like his game. But none of them are like cookie cutter, like the same kind of guy. So that's what I really like about him. We do have a question from another poster. It's a similar question from Canadian Domer. It's regarding these guys. I'm not going to put it up. I'm just going to kind of read it. I have not heard anyone refer to Irvin as having great to elite speed. Do you consider Lamar or Payne primarily a speed running back? If not, do you think Notre Dame should be looking at a speed running back in this class to complement Irvin? And that kind of brings up, like, the person who comes to mind when I say that is Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
Who just recently ran a 4.38 laser time, right? So that's very much a speed back who we kind of compared to Josh Adams a little bit. So how do you feel about that, right? Like, I don't think that Lamar or Irvin are quote unquote speed guys. So how do you feel about Notre Dame kind of targeting Love in lieu of one of those two? I mean, I guess it would be Lamar because Irvin's already in the class.
Yeah. I prefer Jeremiah Love because I do think, I like to have that kind of explosiveness out there. I mean, in saying that, like, it wasn't like you didn't get explosive plays out of Kyron Williams, and I mean, we know he's not the fastest guy. So I think sometimes, and if you look at a lot of the backs, say at like the NFL Combine, like 40 time and some of that can be a little bit overrated because, there's not a ton of guys who are running like sub 4.5. There's just not. In saying that, if you get a guy who can do it, like, that's pretty awesome and pretty special, which is one of the reasons why I'm so high on Love. So yeah, I prefer Love, but I think you're getting guys, if you're viewing it, I think you don't want to just take guys just to say this guy
fits a box.
Fits a box. Like, he's a speed guy, we need another speed guy. You need a guy who you can say, like, this guy can play every down, right? Can this guy play every down? Do we think he can do this? Do we think that he can play on third down? Do we think we can do all this kind of stuff? And I would say that, Lamar, I think, could do that as well, and Love as well. But I'm just saying, so I think that's the way you kind of have to look at it. Would I prefer a guy they had like another home run hitter as on top of Irvin? Yeah, I think that's would be my preference, but I get it. Like, I don't think I would say like no to Jaden Lamar or anything like that. And I think there's a good chance Notre Dame's going to land Jaden Lamar.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on. This is also from RuND. Since you guys both play defense, can you talk a little bit about what makes a defense complex to grasp, and also what makes a defense look complicated to the offense, but yet keeps things simple?
For me, I would say too many rules. You want to have like adjustments for you always want to have adjustments. Like, an offense does something, and so you got to change it up and adjust to them, and it's a chess game, right? And there's a lot of that. At the same time, you don't want to get lost in that, and when you have too much of that, and when you're throwing too much scheme, it's like, we're going to beat these guys because of just straight scheme and this, and we're going to make things where we're always going to disguise coverages, and we're always going to do this, and we're always going to do that. Like, we're always going to show different simulated pressures, like, on each play and whatever. Like, sometimes it's just okay to line up and play ball. And I think that's, to me, when you're doing too much of that and you're worried so much about trying to confuse things for the offense, that's when you can overcomplicate things for your own players. And that's how I view it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, like, when I played in like 2001, 2002. So things aren't the way they are now. It's a little bit different. The hardest part for me was always when any sort of little motion or anything completely changed how the defense was supposed to be run, basically in the back end and even sometimes up front. That is the sort of thing that's like, you're doing too much there, right? Like you have to be able to have a defense called in the way you want the defense to be run. At some point, it needs to be able to be run regardless of their formation, right? And sometimes it's like an easy check, like, all right, hey, we're in 2, they're motioning
Or
out to
if you
empty
do
or
that,
whatever.
everybody knows that this guy goes in motion. Everyone knows this, rather than there's like 3 guys running around pointing.
Right.
Like, you don't want that.
Right. You never want like the formation to be completely flipped, right? Like that, and that is something that can happen, right? Like you can have a strong side call where it's like if they're strong on the right side, whether it's like tight end and 2 wide receivers on the right, but let's say that's into the boundary, right? So like that rule is one way. Then you flip the tight end and you flip the receiver. And now you have to completely flip your entire defense. You have to get the linebackers and everybody moved over. You have to rotate the safeties. You have to do all these other things. And this all has to happen within like 2 or 3 seconds, right? Like, to me, I think there are times when that is necessary, but you don't want to be doing that all the time. You don't want multiple formation shifts like that all the time. As far as what makes it look complicated for the defense, or what for the offense, but like the defense, it's fine, is like you could just be playing a coverage out of a look that it just doesn't look like you're doing that, right? Like Notre Dame does a ton of robber stuff, right? Out of cover 2, sometimes out of cover 3, right? You have someone in a cover 3 position, like they're dropping deep in the middle, in the middle safety is just hanging at them. Like that is not complicated for the defense at all, but it can confuse.
You're showing them something
pre-snap
pre-snap and doing something else post-snap, and it's just. But that's the call. That's the call, and there's not like a million checks off of that. It's just like, this is what you're going to do off of that, and I think that's, to me, and a lot of times it's good defense. It's just good defense to do that. So yeah, I agree with that.
All right, this is the last of the message board from Chapiro. Haven't seen anything on Spindler. Is he going to see some time this year? Chance to start. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the question. I appreciate those words.
I mean, I think he's going to play. I mean, he's going to play this year. Is he going to start? I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on what happens with probably Lug specifically at right guard and where things are at there. This is another thing, because we're not there. We don't see like, oh, Spindler was running with the ones today at right guard and Lug wasn't, or whatever. Or
Spindler won a bunch of one-on-one matchups against X player.
Yeah, right. And we don't, because we don't see that. And we may hear things, a thing or two about somebody getting reps. Like the practice that I went to, that was the full open practice, Spindler didn't get reps with the ones, but I heard the previous practice he did get reps with the ones. So it's like, that's just what we heard, but it wasn't what we saw. So it's like, yeah, unless you're getting a bunch of intel about where these guys are, like, I don't know. So really, do I know what his chances are to start? I don't know offhand or whatever, based on, certainly Harry Heastand raved about him and loved his kind of attitude as a player, which fits everything that I've ever heard about him as well. And I don't know. I'm excited to watch him this year. This year and see if he can maybe make a jump into a starter, or being like the first guy in at guard, right? Because we know, say, like a guy like Lug, he's been banged up a lot of his career too. So that's something to watch.
All right, let's get some of the comment questions in the chat. From Josh Miller, what's your opinion on the early double-digit spread for the Ohio State game? For me, makes sense, right? Like,
feels right.
Yeah, feels right.
Feels correct. Maybe not right is not the wrong word, but feels correct to me that that's how it would go. I actually thought it was going to be like 14.
Yeah.
So when I saw 10 and a half,
yeah.
So when I saw 10 and a half, I was like, not that whatever. I'm like, I think it'll get bet up.
Yeah.
So like, that's just my opinion, whatever. And I think it's, a lot of that is the matchup, right?
Matchup, new coach, new
coach
quarterback,
on the
losing Kyle
road.
Hamilton, losing Kyron
On the
Williams.
road, they got a Heisman candidate. They got the guy who just caught over 300 yards receiving in the Rose Bowl. And on paper, they have a lot more NFL talent than
not playing Florida State.
Yeah.
All right, this one from Josh Schuster. Who will be the junior Jabby of this year's spring game? And I don't know how you take that to me, but the player who is kind of the whoa, what about this guy?
The guy has the thing. I take it as the guy who's going to be like, have a great day, but probably not going to do much in the fall. And my guess would be it's probably going to be like a receiver, like a Matt Salerno, who was a walk-on, who got a scholarship as a slot receiver, or like a Connor Radigan, who's a walk-on, who's part of the podcast with Hamilton and Hart and them too, right? So I think it would be probably one of those guys would be my guess.
Hold on, kids. I'll be there in a second. All right, guys, can you go in the house?
They also agree with me.
That they agree.
Connor
they agree. Junior Jabby. I'm gonna say. Who am I thinking here? I'm flustered. I'm gonna say it's Xavier Watts. That's what I'm gonna say. But not in a Connor Radigan sense, just like
but just in a sense where all of a sudden you're like, oh, he had like 2 huge hits, and people were like, oh wow, but maybe because of the depth chart, he might not play as much, or at least maybe not early in the year as much as people kind of expect him to based off the spring game. Yeah.
All right. From Ryan Feeks, how many years does Notre Dame have with Harry for the O-line, and is there Air Watt?
I honestly don't know how many years Harry wants to coach still. I think he's still pretty. I think he loves it still. I think he's still really into it. I don't think if he was ready to walk away, he wouldn't have come back. So I think they're going to have probably at least a few, would be my guess. And is the Air Chris Watt? I don't know. I think Notre Dame fans would love that. It's a great story if it's like a former player, especially a guy who was like a disciple of Harry Hiestand, and then he kind of rises up for that. But I think that people always want that kind of story, and it doesn't always go that way. Yeah. So I don't know. I heard good things about Chris Watt, but I also heard, like, for anyone who was like, Chris Watt should be the next O-line coach when they were definitely going to move on from Jeff Glenn, I also heard, oh, he's not ready to be the next.
Of course he's not. He's never been he was a line coach for 1 year.
Like, but people hear that and they hear that's just what it is. It's just like when people are like, well, if Tyler Stockton should be the defense coordinator, and it's nothing against Tyler Stockton or that he's not a coach on the rise or whatever, but it's just like, well, you could hire Marcus Freeman or you could hire Tyler Stockton, right? Like there's different levels that guys are more ready, and Marcus Freeman was ready for the job and Tyler Stockton maybe not, right? So people always want the ND guy because it's a nice story, but I don't know for sure that it's going to be the case. It'd be pretty cool if it was, though.
And if I was Harry, I would want to be around for at least as long as Joe Alt and Blake Fisher were around.
So I would guess 2 years minimum.
Yeah. All right. This is from Huron. How high do you think Buckner's ceiling is this year? What do you think his ceiling would be comparable to?
I'd say like top 10 dual threat quarterback in the country is probably a ceiling this year. I mean, that's pretty high ceiling, but I think he does have that kind of talent that he could be. And obviously, we saw what he did as a runner last year and kind of the stuff that he can do there. So, I would say I think based on already seeing that, that's kind of the way he could be like a top 10 dual threat. Like is he going to be like, I think it's way too much to ask to say, like,
can he be the reason Notre Dame wins a playoff game in 2022?
I'm going to say no. I think that's a lot to ask this year, but I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that's more of like a year away after starting. That's just me.
I think that's his ceiling. I don't think it's likely, but I think that's what his ceiling is. I think he could have Notre Dame win a playoff game. That's what I think. All right, C-Mac, is Tyler Buchner winning quarterback battle? I would say yes.
I would be surprised if he didn't win it,
right.
Just because I think even if it's like a tie, Buchner would get the edge.
Yeah. All right. Ryan Feeks, if the worst case scenario happens at wide receiver regarding injuries and Styles and Davis go down with the ceiling. What is the ceiling for the season?
Why don't we just throw in injuries to Foskey, Jason Admiral, Marist again? Why don't we do if Styles and Davis go? Yeah, it would be horrific. What do you think? Worst case scenario? The season's not going to go well if they're already super banged up, and if they're already missing guys at receiver and whatever. Like, it's probably not going to be a good situation. It's just the reality. That's just the kind of thing. And Notre Dame has had areas where it's like, oh man, they can't really afford to lose somebody before, and it's gone bad for them. Like, so I'm thinking like 2014 defensive line, and they had like not very good depth, and all of a sudden Sheldon Day got hurt and Jerron Jones got hurt, and then things really fell apart for the defense in the back half. And I know BBG is part of that, but it's like a lot of that was personnel driven. And like, when you lose those two guys, there's a reason why they looked a certain way against Florida State compared to how they looked the rest of the year. And then you could say 2017, I mean, they had Tillery and Jonathan Bonner, who, like, Jonathan Bonner, I'm not even sure if he's a rotation player on this team, he was a fine player, but just not a guy who started and they counted on to play a really, really big role. And I mean, that's just kind of the situation where they're at, where like Heinisch was not ready to play, and then they had to play some. And then MTA really kind of wasn't ready to play, but he had to play a lot. And so, but luckily, like, Tillery never got hurt. And that was like, they got through the year and played pretty decent defense. And so I just kind of think that's where they're at receiver. They can maybe lose one guy, but if they lose two really important guys like that, I think that could be a big problem.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's end it this last one. I feel like it's a good one to end with. Who is the top breakout player on both sides of the ball?
I would say, I mean, it feels like a cop-out to talk about guys that we always kind of mention, like to say like Lorenzo Styles is going to be the breakout guy on offense. But if you say he already broke out in the Fiesta Bowl, then I will say the breakout player this year will be Blake Fisher. And that will be the guy that people are talking about the most. Outside of, I mean, it's hard for an offensive lineman to get a lot of buzz, but I think he's the guy who's going to get a lot of buzz. And then on defense, it's easy to say Marist, but then it's like, is it kind of cheating because he was supposed to be last year, but then he got hurt and whatnot? But I would still say Marist this year. If I can't say him, I'm going to say Howard Cross, because he was getting a just ton of good buzz. The coaching staff has raved about him. I've heard a ton of good stuff about him, like outside of like back channel stuff about how he's had the spring. And then at the practice that I went to, he was the best player on the field on defense. So I would just say that, if he keeps building up on it and he's playing 3-tech, and I think he's got a chance to be really, really good this year, and kind of like building on to a little bit like, say, like Jason Manuel last year, where I'd say like he kind of broke out like that. Yeah.
Good one. All right, offense, I'll say Audric Estime. I think that we've heard a lot of good things about him. I think there's going to be a role for him. I think he's motivated. And I think he's just gonna. I think he's gonna break out. I just think he's gonna get more opportunity, and he's hungry. And I think that's a recipe for a breakout player. And on defense, I've been talking a lot about Xavier Watts, but I think the person who is truly going to be people are going to say wow, this is a very, very good player, is Ramon Henderson. I love his game. I love his skill set.
Love that pick.
I like him playing next to Brandon Joseph, where Joseph is going to get the pub. And I think that Ramon Henderson is going to just be free to, as kind of the second wheel back there, roam around. Great athlete, physical player, can make plays on the ball, show good ball skills. I think he's going to be fantastic for Notre Dame this year.
I think just in normally kind of breakout players, it seems like there's maybe one or two eyes, but I really think on defense this year, there could be 5 or 6 breakout guys for Notre Dame on defense.
Would take.
Yeah. I think it's just a really high ceiling for the defense. And I could say the same about offense because, you said Audric Estime, and I definitely think that he could be a breakout player this year, but Logan Diggs could also be a breakout player.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just picking one, right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's just kind of where we're at, is that, that's how, there's a lot of young guys that I think, that are in their second or third year in the program that I think have a chance to be really, really good this year and really make the leap. So, it's exciting times to be a Notre Dame fan. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I'm just going to get rid of that one. I don't know how to do that. Let's get rid of that banner. There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our mailbag. This was a lot of fun. I liked it. We're going to have to do this kind of on a semi-regular basis going forward. A lot of good questions, a lot of good people.
Great questions. Thanks, everybody.
A lot of good chat interactions in the chat. Thank you for everyone on the message board and the irishsportsdaily.com message board. We are going to come back to you soon. Hopefully, we're going to have a show maybe later on this week. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll have a show later on this week. Check out irishsportsdaily.com. Tons of content coming to you all the time. Power Hour is going to be coming on Monday. Check that out. That's going to be in your Apple Podcast feed. And until then, we will talk to you soon.